Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed that panel from Junie Dijkstra. I certainly did. So joining me now is Veronica, and she's going to be talking about player insights as a force multiplier. So Veronica, over to you.
Thank you so much, Tom. Hi, everyone. Thrilled to be here with you. And today I'm going to be sharing with you about UX research. UX research gives you player insights and how you can leverage that as a force multiplier to get the most out of your game while you're in development and once you launch. So, how is it that I'm going to be talking about this and talking from experience here? Just to introduce briefly myself, my name is Veronica Zamito. I'm the CEO of Research in Play, which is a user experience research consultancy. It was started in 2019, but myself and my team members, Paul Newton and Karen Lim, bring a wealth of knowledge from the game industry. And I personally have been in the game industry for over 20 years. I'm the former director of UX research at Electronic Arts. So I've been lucky enough for a really long time to work on amazing franchises, a lot of different games, and a lot of different game studios, even regardless of the experience on the corporate world. It's a company of companies, and there was always a lot of freedom in terms of how every culture was being developed and the whole myriad of games from console to PC to mobile. And since working as well independently, working with a variety of developers and publishers from still AAA large developers and publishers, but also with smaller indie developers, helping them from the start and while creating their game. So honestly, that's what keeps me going, to see and be working with a variety of multiple people, still being delighted with all the different mechanics that come back to life on the different games. And that's that spark of delight is actually going to be core to what is research and why is this important. So just to get all of us on the same page when we talk about what is user experience research, if I have to say it in one sentence, which is this one, it is the systematic understanding of players in relation to the game. So that's a more succinct way of sometimes other larger, broader definitions in terms of it is understanding of players that is coming from leveraging a lot of different multidisciplines out there, from psychology, social science, human-computer interaction, ethnography, design, and art. So all those tools from all these disciplines are going to help to understand who are those players. Importantly, on how they feel about games, about how they behave about the games. So this understanding of players happens even before people start playing the game. Even when they hear about this new game, they read a description about what the game is, they watch a trailer, a friend told them about this game. So before any actual first-hand interaction with the game, players are already getting information and they're already starting to create some understanding, expectations of what the game will be. Also, when players play your game, they're already coming with a myriad of previous experiences. So they come loaded with the experience of the competitor titles or previous installments of your game or other games from your studio. So players are not necessarily that blank slate once they come to your game, but you need to understand what they come with. Obviously, that bread and butter of that understanding of players and relation to the game is going to happen while they're playing the game. And we're going to talk a bit more about that in a second. And even after people finish playing your game, they kind of still, thinking about it, and maybe even when they remember playing the game, is going to be like reactualizing what they thought, what they think about the game. So that experience is an overarching aspect from before, during, and after playing the game. And all that is going to be shaping how they also engage next time with your game, maybe just in the next session. So then we think about what are those key aspects that encompass under this user experience. And here we're going to be thinking about motivations or psychological needs, the why people play, what is actually tapping to them, tickling in terms of what they want to play. What are those motivations? Again, we're going to expand on that. The emotions, how people feel, what are those emotions that the game elicit, and that's going to be dependent on your game. So it's not just about fun, but it could be all these emotions that you're trying to evoke. Behaviors are going to be huge, what people do in your game, how they are actually interacting with that. And obviously there is also cognition, so how people think while they are playing with the game. That might be cognitive processes of processing information that the game is presenting, call it like feedback, menus, that they can actually do the actions that they need to, but can they understand it as well? And ultimately, it is all about satisfaction. We are also like creating this game for people to feel fulfilled with this experience that you're presenting them with. And it's actually that satisfaction is going to be the validation for that game experience that you put forward with the game. So user experience research is going to look at all these different aspects before, during, and after people play the game to make sure that people are satisfied with the game. And why would you like to employ UX research in your game? What's the value that is going to bring to the table? So if you boil down this presentation and need to walk away with the three main reasons of what UX research provides you with, when you combine that player experience that we talk about and described, and you also combine that with some business guidance, maybe from your studio head, maybe from the publisher, and how your game fits in the portfolio, things that maybe you need to take into consideration when creating the game. Obviously, the creative direction, that's going to be huge. There's an idea that why this game is coming to life and what it is, that experience that is trying to be shaped for the players. And you combine all these three elements, that is going to be, when you combine them, and these are informed with the insights from user experience research, we could say that this is informed user experience. Is informed by all these aspects, the vision, the guidance from the business, and what players and how players are reacting to the game. All that, if you apply it and bring it out throughout your whole pipeline when creating the game, to having these player insights throughout, you're going to start reducing risk on what are maybe challenges that players might face and maybe drop out of the game, or maybe why they would not like the game. So you're getting ahead of these potential pitfalls, and if you get ahead of these pitfalls, then you're reducing this risk of what can go wrong with the game. You're going to have information well ahead of time to actually make adjustments early on, which brings to point number 2 of takeaways. If you make those adjustments early on, because you can have that foresight, you're actually going to be saving cost in development, because those changes or the pivots that what you need to do are going to be spotted much earlier, and you'll be able to nip in the bud any changes or any problems there. So there is solutions that you can maybe just change through an early prototype, and you don't need to implement all those changes to then have to change them again. You know what your players might want, so you're going to be implementing certain features and not others, therefore also saving you time and cost. And because you know what people are feeling and thinking or doing with your game, uh, you are measuring how satisfied you are with their game. This is a way to increase the chances of launching a successful product. So it is going to be incredibly valuable to know what are these player insights and how you bring them very early on in your production. And let me dive in a bit more on that player experience, because that is going to be what actually is going to be part of these player insights. And when we talk about player experience, there are, I'd say, like 3 main buckets where we can tap onto players and understand them better. And one is going to be affect. And what I mean with affect here is those emotions. Again, is the game fun? We know that it's more than fun, but insert the emotion that your game is trying to elicit, even if it's being scared, if it's more like a horror game, or that sense of thrill, if more uh, battles or fightings, or more like action oriented. Another component is going to be flow, and this relates to the concept of jihad, where you're trying to find that sweet spot between the challenge and the skill of the players that's going to help to be more immersed. That sensation of time passing by, pure focus on the activity at hand. And another aspect of affect is going to be aesthetics. And this one is going to be aspects of like storytelling. And as human beings, we are very like drawn to stories and how we actually consume that information. And it's also going to be about the art and that sense of visual aesthetic, and also the audio aesthetic and the music, the sound effects. All those aspects are going to be more of that affective sensation with the game. With behavior, and here I have 3 concepts that are leveraged from the self-determination theory. Some of you might have heard about it, if not briefly. This sense of autonomy actually refers to being able to feel that you can make your own choices. So, in a way that is the game allowing you to actually make the choices so that you feel you're making the choices. You're making your own decisions. And that's important because it's also having to have a sense of that you have impacted the outcome of your actions. Then there is a sense of competence. And this is actually getting about the core skills that you might need to employ with the game. It's actually another way of saying, like, how do you get better at what you're doing and having that sense of mastery. And the third concept of relatedness, that one is more about the connection with others. Okay. As humans, we are gregarious. We like to relate to each other. We're social. So how do we connect with others? Can I play with my friends if it's online? Or is it more solo? Or maybe I want to play by myself. Like, how much do I want that dial of social and access to others to be there? And then the third bucket of measuring player experience is going to be that cognition. And two key aspects of this are going to be usability. And with usability, think about it in the more core terms about, is it easy to use? Can I pick up the game and start playing? Can I actually be effective with the control mapping of how I'm supposed to play the game? That bleeds into a physical interface. And then you also have the digital interfaces, call them menus, call them the HUD, everything that is on screen that allows you to actually know what's going on with the game. And we should never confuse the game challenge with bad usability. Usability, things should be clear in the game about what's happening and what it is. And that sense of, again, competence mastery is going to come from the behavior. And that's where the challenge factor is going to happen. But you can measure player experience in these three buckets. And I'm going to show you on the next slide different methods of how can you collect data to measure the player experience. And here what I have in this slide is, gotta love an axis chart with, on one end, we have qualitative, and that's going to be those rich descriptions of what the experience is. I'm going to use words to describe my emotions. I'm going to be into the details of what it means to me. Whereas on the quantitative is going to be something that I can obviously count, classify in a more systematic manner. And then I have objective and subjective. So objective is more about this, something that we can actually measure, and if multiple people look at that measurement, we agree that it is the same. And what is this subjective, maybe there is a little bit of more color on how to make this interpretation that comes from that personal experience. So if we describe, for example, an open interview where we ask questions how people are feeling or what they are thinking, or again an interview or be like think aloud, is going to be more on that qualitative end, which is very important to know why things are happening. Whereas on the quantitative end, we have, for example, telemetry, where we know exactly what people did in the game, because when they push that button, we know that now they loaded that weapon, and now we know how many times they shoot, and now we know how many enemies they killed. So you could do it automatically through the game engine. It could be through direct observation, where someone is doing a tally of that. And ultimately, this is telling you a lot of what happened. And in user research, we know that it's best when you can combine the qualitative with the quantitative, so you know why people are experiencing and doing what they are doing with what they are doing. So ultimately, what this slide is telling you is that there are an arsenal of different methodologies that you can collect data from players and then measure what their experience is like. And you can also put some metrics out of those measurements. And now moving to the next slide on how you apply all these user experience research into the production pipeline of your game. Here I have the canonical steps that every game goes through for those kind of more like already live cycle, imagining more like a circle, but ultimately everyone starts with an ideation phase. Then you go to pre-production, production, and post-production. UX research supports game development throughout all these components. And we're going to be breaking these ones one by one. So at the very beginning of the project, when you have that idea of what the game should be, there are the possibility of actually validating that this idea is worth investing. Is ultimately asking you these questions that we have here. Are we building the right thing? Beyond the passion that every single developer can have for their own idea, you are creating a product. You are creating a product that you want to sell, that you want people to buy it, that is going to be profitable so you can continue making more games. And also, when you're looking for investment from a publisher, they are investing in you because they're also expecting that revenue coming out. So this is going to be critical for answering to those publishers that your game is viable. So don't underestimate research early on. You definitely don't need a full fleshed out game to actually start thinking about how players react to that. You start integrating research from the get-go. And here we have like 3 categories that you should be integrating research in your life cycle. We have market research and desirability. What do we mean with this? Well, we want to understand, first of all, what it is the competitive landscape at the moment. Are you going to be going into a very specific genre and how saturated that genre is? How do you stack rank with like best in class based on the ideas that you want to do? Do you know what are those best practices in that space and that you can compare? Again, what are you proposing against what's out there in the market? And to start thinking about those measurable buckets in terms of how people feel about those mechanics, those games that are currently out there. And even if you're trying to do a new twist in a certain genre, like what's going to be that spin? Are you going to try to bring a new space and be that innovative? And how people will react to that game? Could they migrate to yours, or are they going to stick to certain games? So this should be painting a very clear picture of where do players live within this competitive landscape, and starting to indicate what are going to be potential hooks that you can tap into the players. And very importantly, what's going to be your differentiator from these competitors. So UX research activities that gives you the most out of in this early stage is benchmarking and competitive analysis. So The benchmarking is mostly around having players to play the game of a competitor, for instance, that you consider to be best in class. You collect data from players using those methodologies that we talk about. And that's going to give you an idea exactly of where players are reacting to this game, where good looks like. And as a quick example, you can benchmark, how much fun is this game? You can insert your own emotion, and let's say like on a scale from 1 to 5, and you find that your competitor is a 4, and that gives you an idea of where you're standing and what you're aiming for. You're trying to create a little bit of those metrics. You're also going to use some of those qualitative methodologies, and you're going to start like digging into why are they engaging with this game? What are their favorite parts? What are the aspects that actually they are not enjoying that much? And maybe that's something that will give you a little bit of a competitive edge for your own game. So the benchmarking is going to be ultimately on having information from the players about the space that you're trying to break into. And the competitive and market analysis is going to be deconstructing those games using heuristics and best practices on the game, so you can do like a very design analysis from these behavioral and affective and cognitive best practices on the game. The other aspect to do early on is going to be understanding who your players are. And that's going to be huge, because if you don't know who your target audience is, it's going to be harder to then knowing what features to prioritize to invest your limited resources on that. So if you know what their needs and motivations are, then you can start mapping if their needs are being satisfied in your game. We were talking about like some of those needs could be around the social aspect. So what of your features are going to enable to connect with other players? Or what features or what game modes do they have to do work with others? Or maybe what aspects of the game is allowing them to have some solo time. So if you know what are the needs and motivations of your players, then you start mapping your game to those needs, and you can see if there are still needs that are unsatisfied, or you are actually providing a very strong game where they can actually get that satisfaction on the multiple components of what they desire in the game. You can talk about the motivations in themselves, and I have here, for example, the folks at Quantic Foundry, super smart people, created a framework with universal motivations. So you could refer to those as well to think about if these are things that people do want. That sense, again, we talk about that sense of mastery, we talk about that social, that thrill, and you can start like using that as a point of reference on your game. And you can start doing developing personas or segments. I'm happy to explain later on what the distinction those are. But again, it's very powerful. It's almost like a map to where you want to go with your game. It's the map of to the heart and of your players. And the beauty on that is also creates alignment for your team. Even if you're a very small team, like everyone has to have clarity of what are the pillars of your games, what are we trying to create. It also gives you a vocabulary to talk about your players and the relation to your game. And it cannot be understated. Like companies of different sizes sometimes, move forward with that solely with that creative vision, and it's going to take you so far, but then it's going to be sometimes like mishaps in terms of how to focus on design decisions. If it's, what's best for your players, and that's, you want to understand who are those players. So this kind of taxonomy is going to be helping you to clear up a lot of confusion about what's going to make your game most successful. So how can you make that happen in a lightweight manner? So how do you know who your players are? Well, lean on some of the free resources online from market research reports. There are some from Newzoo, Statista. They have their paid version, but they also publish some free resources, white papers, where those are going to be giving you information in terms of what the market sizing, something that, again, when you walk to talk to a publisher, they will be very interested in knowing how much of that market sizing you are targeting, and who are your audiences. So a direct UX research impact is having that clarity to then walk to the meeting with the publisher and being able to articulate what are you going after. The other thing that you can do is, again, use those models like the one I just showed you from Project Foundry, to talk about what are the motivations that are going to be the most relevant to your players. And you can create with that, it's going to be kind of like a proto persona. At least you are trying to define it in a certain way, shape, or form, even without collecting tons of data, but you are leveraging these frameworks to give shape to this. And then do run small scale play testing surveys. And when I mean small scale, it is interesting how much information you can collect from 20 to 30 people. That's something that at an indie level can still give you meaningful information at a fraction of the price that other companies will invest. The larger the companies, the more certainty to a certain level they want to be, and they will be creating the personas and the understanding of their market with hundreds and thousands of respondents. And even though in an ideal world, for sure, that would be a nice number of data, don't underestimate that 23 people is going to give you a good sense of where certain motivations are, what are, again, what are the aspects that they like from other games or maybe of your previous games. So don't be shy on that, and don't underestimate how much information you can get with those. So early on ideation, you can do a lot of things and in lightweight, fast manner. It's going to be fast, it's not going to be that expensive, and you're going to have great impact for talking to the publisher and getting investment, and also aligning internally with your team about this game vision and how it aligns with the players. Okay. Moving on, and here I put pre-production and production together. This is more for the sake of time. ultimately, this is going to be advancing in the fidelity of your game and your product from your early prototypes. Something might be more like in a sandbox, something without texture, maybe some wireframes. Uh, you have a myriad of resources to start early on, to start creating that game in a more tangible manner. And then you keep refining it through time. And what we're trying to do is, are we hitting that mark early on? And then with that fidelity until the point is, are you ready to launch? Not just because the assets are in the game, but also because people are enjoying it to a level of satisfaction that hits or surpass that benchmark that you set up before. And how do you do this? Well, you want to start better understanding how players react to your game, ultimately. That's going to be the core of the user experience, right? You're going to start in the pre-production, small. Maybe you have a vertical slide, maybe a little portion of your game. Generally, you will focus more on those core game mechanics early on, and you can start putting players in front of it and see again how satisfied they are, satisfied based on those components that we talked before: affect, behavior, and cognition. As your game progresses and you have it more fleshed out, now looking at that overarching overall experience and how delightful that is. Again, we're measuring that user experience. And then in terms of usability, we talk about, can players pick up the game and start playing? Are they facing any friction points? Yes, no. That also goes into accessibility and specific aspects on, are every single type of player able to play your game? The other aspect on pre-production and production is going to be onboarding. I'm kind of like smirking here because we know that people have access to thousands of games. I'm sure that many of you have your Steam libraries full of games that you wouldn't really need to buy more games to just keep playing for the rest of your life. And because there are so many games out there, you need to provide a seamless onboarding experience before people say like, oh, this is boring, I don't get it, I don't know what to do, I'm getting blocked, this is frustrating, I'm putting the game down. So onboarding, it deserves its own line in the user research life cycle in the game development. And a lot of the onboarding is going to be more polished once you have everything defined on your core game mechanics, but you need to start thinking about it early on what's going to be that information that is going to be presented to the player, to help them to learn the game as fast as possible. So this is going to be done mostly by play testing, and that's going to be more of the imaginary of what you think about UX research. Yes, you want the people to play the game, and usability tests, yes, it could be separate test from the play testing. Actually, I would encourage everyone to do usability tests before running your play test, in the sense that you want to remove any obstruction, any friction point on how to play the game before you play the game. In the sense that if my control mapping is clunky, I'm not going to have a great time running around the game. If I cannot find the specific mode that you are trying to push to your players, well, they're never ever going to play that game mode if it's sunk into a submenu of a submenu. And that was kind of one of the examples. One of a well-known game that it was expanding the game modes that it was providing, and it was a large investment, as you know, to create a whole new component on the game and launching it, and people not playing it. And then you're wondering why people are not playing it. And then you can look at one of the type of data, the telemetry, and nobody was going there. And you don't know about why they're not going there. And then doing a usability study, and it was simply that people could not find that option in the menu because it was hidden under a sub menu of it. So again, don't underestimate the power that it can have doing these tests ongoingly. Now, how do you do them? Or well, I know the top tips on how to actually do those. So sometimes you might have heard that you can do tests with not that many people, and that's true for usability tests. So again, when you're more onto those functions, something around 5 to 10 people at a time, so with a specific build of your game, can give you a lot of these usability issues. And those, usability problems are not necessarily by consensus. When people are facing a wall, it's like everyone is facing a wall. So do small scale usability studies with usability while they're playing the game in an iterative manner. So every so often, every couple of builds, you can run another test. 5 people is not that much. And then you can leverage your community for those larger playtests. And with larger here, more about 20 to 30 players. And I'm saying those numbers because in those you're trying to also go for those more effective and more those qualitative aspects where you want to see if there are trends on how people react to the game, and that might be more are they tapping into those motivations. And also partner with accessibility experts, a bunch of smart folks that can actually be more specific into a variety of accessibility aspects. So they have information and solutions to go over that they can review your game for accessibility issues as well. So what's the impact of this? You're going to be through months of or years, depending on the type of game, of pre-production and production. And we said that the goal was, are we doing it correctly? And if yes, we're making those changes through time in an iterative manner, always with user feedback, until you hit that point of, yes, it's good enough. And to know that it's good enough, you need to be tracking those metrics from your playtests. So UX research is going to support this iterative design success, and it's going to allow you to allocate resources wisely. If something is broken or people are not enjoying this, you allocate resources to that. If something is working fine and expected, you can continue. So when you know that your benchmarking numbers, you're reaching those, you're also reducing the risk of a flop by launch. And now to the last kind of stage, we're talking about post-production. You were doing all that research, you were doing it in a nimble manner, you were doing those iterative tests with a handful of players here and there. Now you launch, and now those questions are about understanding why players stay or they leave the game. Trends change through time. New competitor titles come in. Maybe people want to migrate to the new shiny thing. So you want to know how are players currently engaging with your games and others' games. You want to know what's been the most successful in producing this interest and the loyalty to stay in your game, and therefore how you're going to be utilizing those resources. And ultimately, again, looking at that bigger landscape and what's the market performance for your game, and maybe also think about what could be new product opportunities for the game. Maybe thinking about a new installment, or maybe like something about this game was particularly good that actually you could build a new game out of that idea. For this one, you might want to use a different type of tools in your UX research repertoire. There is something called diary studies that you actually follow players through time, like they write in their diaries for certain periods of times, might be a couple of days, maybe a week, maybe a month. You want to see how their engagement with the game varies. So you will be sending surveys at different intervals, capturing that data, a lot of, again, how they are feeling, why they are feeling a certain way, and then you combine them with, what are they doing? Maybe you can combine that through telemetry, or again, maybe you can make like some observation that maybe they can like self provide. Now, how you can make that more specifically, again, I mentioned surveys, because you're trying to see a bit more of those larger trends. Think about maybe like send it to 30, 50 people, again, leverage your community, provide that sense of engagement and feedback from the players back to the developers. You can also, many of them will do it and already have done it. Reading those reviews in a very systematic manner can give you also really good information. Big disclaimer, those are generally the louder voices, so don't take by volume where the biggest problems are, but it will still give you an indication of how people are resonating with those. Just be mindful of not allocating too many priorities based on those reviews. You want to make sure that you have a variety of different hearing from different personas, different segments, not just for the very vocal ones. So that's a disclaimer. And ultimately, what it is going to help you with is increasing retention and providing you with support on how to augment or how to leverage those opportunities for your future game. So if you are thinking about your game, you launch it, you did have your different personas, someone who was more a completionist, someone who was more of a collector, someone who liked to battle, and someone who is more social, and you have those four of them, you can start like keeping track of how they are performing with the game, if those features are in maintaining that level of engagement, or maybe one of them converts better than the other in your game. So maybe you can then double down on some of them and put your resources invested in one of these personas instead of others. So with all that, we're coming up to the end of the presentation. I just wanted to bring it all together, and we talk about what UX research is, the importance of using a variety of different techniques to have different type of data, and we talk about how you use those throughout the whole production pipeline, from ideation to post-production, helping you to know, are you designing the right game? Are you designing it right? Are you ready for launch? And how you maintain engagement and looking at your next game. We put different buckets in terms of how research can help to provide those player insights. And you will those player insights fairly early on and throughout, because it's going to reduce the risk of things not working or people not engaging with the game. Is going to save you development costs, because now you know where to prioritize and what's working and not working through the lens of the players. And you're going to be way better positioned to have a successful launch for your game. So I wish you all a very happy UX research to achieve that successful launch. And with that, we reach the end, and we can allocate the last 10 minutes for Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Veronica. That was actually really, really interesting. And I'm not normally one for research. So, so we do have a couple of questions. We'll start with this one from LinkedIn. So Joseph says, would you recommend studios create their own benchmarks for the type of game that they're trying to build, or use an off-the-shelf benchmarking option like the PXI?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question, and something very common. So definitely to Joseph's point, kind of like indicating the question, if you're a small studio or indie, probably maybe just grabbing something off the shelf or something that has been good, or PXI, or again, those frameworks like from other established consultancies would be good. But I think as the larger you get, there is benefits of creating your own. And it is because it's going to allow you to delve into the nuances of your specific game. The ones off the shelf are going to be good, but a bit more generic. Whereas the ones that you can create yourself might be way more tailored to specificities. So maybe progression is a big thing in your game, and it's more like RPG, and it has certain components. So you will be able to leverage those a little bit better, and that's going to give you more detailed insight that's going to be talking specifically for your game. But again, options of how much time and effort needs to be invested and getting into the nuances of your product.
Awesome. Joseph, hope that answers your question. So this time we've got one from YouTube. This is from Wellham Gaming. Can you recommend where to start as a UX graduate who's finding it impossible to get a hire to a studio's UX team?
Yeah, it's and it's tough times nowadays as well. It is not just graduates, but in the current landscape on the industry, like even people with years of experience are having a hard time. But that being said, I would say that actually networking is incredibly powerful to actually be able to find these opportunities out there. Go to your local meetups. There are always like festivals, indie festivals that in your city, in your area, that you can actually talk to people. It is going to be ultimately a way to stand out and see if you are a good fit or they are a good fit for you. finding employment goes both ways. Now you want to
Oh
go
yeah.
and play in a good place. So, they interview you, but you should be interviewing them as much as well. If they have like the right culture for what you want, and the kind of products that you maybe you want to work, and maybe that's the attraction for you. But to get to that point, I would highly recommend to go to all the in-person events that you can attend. Obviously, the onlines are also pretty good. There are many servers where people are very engaged on those discussions. And also have your portfolio ready. Like, nothing speaks louder as you be able to demonstrate quickly what you have been doing, how you have been doing it, and ultimately, problem solving, which is kind of like a core skill that any employer will be looking for. Wish you luck.
Awesome. So I've got another one from LinkedIn. It's not showing the name on here, but it's from Jeffrey Mendoza. Do you have an opinion on which persona or player behavior new small indies should prioritize based on your experience with either successful or unsuccessful organizations and projects?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I wouldn't say that there's a specific persona that is more attractive or less attractive, or more troublesome or successful, unsuccessful. I think that that's going to come down to, again, analyzing what that target audience is going to be, and that market sizing, um, and how you fit into that. So again, if you're going to a saturated genre, like, what's going to be your key differentiator, and how you're going to make sure that that satisfies a certain need of that persona. So there's not inherently bad or good personas. It's more about how much clarity you have that that is an actual need of your target audience, and how well your game is satisfying that need, either by leveraging on that social, can people find their friends they can already bring in, or how do they make new friends? So it's more about in the context that you have to use it, and nothing. There's no bad nature out there.
Cool. Hopefully that's helped you out there, Jeffrey. One from this one actually came in through Discord. How do you approach measuring fun or engagement, which can be subjective?
Yeah, so that is one of the most common questions, and yes, it can be subjective, and that's why also a lot of emphasis on understanding your audience, and that's a lot of emphasis why publishers want you to know who your target audience is. If you have done a pitch for a publisher, you know that they like to know that you are aware of who you're targeting, because that measurement of fun could give you completely different scores based on your persona. Again, let's say that someone, and I keep leveraging on the social, but let's say that you are targeting to a target audience, that a person who is very much social, and you are measuring a benchmark of fun in an MMO, and it's going to be great. But for maybe a target audience that actually social is not at all their motivation, and you put it in an MMO, and they're going to get a bad metric. So understanding the metric also relates to which persona that you're measuring from players that are your target audience. So that would be one key way to take out the subjectivity of measuring fun, but making sure that you are testing with the right target audience, or you're testing with the players that fit your target audience. So that would be the first and foremost aspect to deal with the subjectivity. And then once you have the right people trying your game and you're measuring that, you can go with questions again, like a Likert scale 1 to 5, how fun this game was, or you can be again more on the nuances of your game about like this specific mechanic, or was the weapons were satisfying to use, and that's where you go into one of the first question where you're going to start using going from more like off the shelf questions such how fun it was to something that is more about your specific mechanics, and that will give you obviously a little more of like detail for fine tuning at a feature level.
Awesome. Well, I think we're out of time, unfortunately. It's been great having you on, Veronica. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm not really, a data person, so I've definitely learned something new and found something actually quite interesting that I'm probably going to go and do some research on myself. Surprisingly.
Excellent.
So up next we have Brian Cronin with playtesting process for ultra small teams. So stay tuned, and we'll see you all later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.